Latin had been furthest from the minds of the working class teachers I was with in school, so I didn't know what to do. I was desperate. And I went through every single university brochure, and I finally found one which said social studies, politics and economics and psychology. Psychology was kind of sinister. I thought I'd be dealing with juvenile delinquents and crazy cooks, possibly, if I took a course. But anyway, I applied and I got it, and I went up for an interview at the great Durham Castle at Durham University, whose motto was non nobis solum, which I didn't know what it meant anyway. And I was knocked on the door of the master of the college, having confronted, it's a beautiful Norman castle, those of you who may know it, and Lieutenant Colonel MacFarlane Grieve, MCMA. I stood in the doorway of his room. He looked at me without saying anything. I calculated that through his Coke bottle glasses I must be much diminished in size. I was not much to start with, 5'7" according to the RAF, but I shrank with every passing humiliating second as he said nothing. I was probably about 12 inches high when I advanced, raised to babble about Thucydides, which I'd been reading before I got there. If he broached the importance of a classical education, he didn't. He offered a gentle smile. "Do you row, Evans?" Well, I'd never been in a rowing boat in my life, so I knew I was wrong tack to try and pretend. So I said, I saw a film, Yank at Oxford. It was very exciting with all the wonderful young men rowing. And he gave me a bleak smile. He said, "Close the door on your way out." And it was over. But however, as I was leaving, he said, "And go and see Dr. Gregory." Dr. Gregory was the head tutor. Now, finding the head tutor meant confronting the dragon lady who kept the castle gate. And I asked her where the head tutor was. She said, "In that crack up there, young man." She thought I was very impertinent. So I went up these stone stairs, Norman stairs, winding Norman stairs, and this is what happened actually. To reach the Norman gallery, I had to confront the dragon lady again and ask her to point the way. There was a door off the courtyard, then beyond that an obscure crack in an ancient wall leading to a sharp spiral of a very narrow stone staircase. As I climbed, I came upon a tiny panelled doorway in the rock. I knocked. No answer. I knocked. I waited. I eased the door, coughed politely, and fell on my knees. Because when I opened the door, there were steps immediately behind it, some bastard Norman's idea of a practical joke. So I fell on my steps head over heels into this toilet, which is what it was. It was a toilet, but I hadn't been forewarned about this. But when I finally got my way out of this situation and got to some more stairs, I came to a black-studded door where there was a man, as I describe it here, sat reeking cleverness in a wood-panelled room. There was the deliciously musty smell of books and the dust of centuries of crumbling stone. The cathedral bells told the hour, and the crucial interview began. Why did I want to be in Castle? Why not in St. Cuthbert's Society? Why not in Diggs? What about King's College, Newcastle? I extrapolated about college life, about a few weeks I'd spent at Manchester University on a short course on the RAF. Why spend 3 years away from the headlines, Evans? Did I realise how long 3 years, Evans? Don't you think? Why do you want to go into studies? Why not North Good? Why don't you have Latin? No Latin, eh? Well, never mind. You'll learn something, I suppose. What did you learn at the RAF? What books impressed you? What are you reading now? What do you think of the literary quality of English newspapers, Evans? What does a reporter do anyway? What did I consider good writing? I was sort of, it's like facing a fantastic fastball. Every one of them was a fastball with the occasional googly in there. And I don't know what happened, but when I came out and got a place at University College, and I went and I got a very good degree, etc., in politics and economics, and then 2 years later I won a postgraduate scholarship, Chicago University and Stanford University. So I've left my working class shoes behind now. Now I'm an educated BA, fellow of this college, fellow of that college. Extraordinary, really. But I won this college, which was a fantastic example of American generosity. There was a man called Harkness who was making harnesses in Cleveland, and one of his friends said, "Why didn't you go into business with him?" said this man. And so we did, and this other man's name was Rockefeller. Was then finding oil. So they went in and he made a fortune, and he was passionate about Britain, and he wanted to do something like the Rhodes Scholarship. So he established the Harkness Scholarship, which was the same as the Rhodes Scholarship. And I was supposed to do 2 years of study. The one problem with it was that they insisted on celibacy, i.e. no wives, no sex, nothing, study. I didn't see myself as a monk somehow entering Chicago University, so I pleaded with them to allow me to take my new wife. And they were very grumpy about this, said, "You know, we've found that wives are distracting, and also they cost a lot." I said, "Well, she's a teacher, she won't cost anything, and she's not distracting, she's too busy cutting up frogs in biology lessons." So anyway, I finally persuaded them I could live. I could bring her after 6 months if I lived on $10 a week in the United States. So I came. I went to University of Chicago, but first I had to arrive in New York, and this was one of my most exciting experiences in my entire life, still is. Coming into New York by ship is the only way to arrive in America, as the first Virginians and Pilgrims did. The millions who now come by air every year to JFK or Newark miss the euphoria of landfall as the sea mist dissolves into Lady Liberty and syncopating skyscraper, and soon enough you are tasting the cosmopolitan street life of the city. P.G. Wodehouse said that arriving in New York was like going to heaven without the bother and expense of dying. I woke the next morning floating on cumulonimbus cloud, my soul borne up by the glorious sound of Bach's St. Matthew Passion. The prosaic explanation was this, that I was in a high-rise apartment on West 23rd Street, the guest of a friend of mine who'd installed loudspeakers under every bed, each wired to the perpetual loop of a tape recorder playing Bach. Herb Erthine could not live without the round-the-clock music, which was therapy for his days manufacturing metal coat hangers for the 7th Avenue garment trade. Well, when I wandered round Herb's apartment, I had a measure of how far behind we'd fallen in America, in Britain. Herb's high-tech kitchen had things I'd never seen in my life, coming from Britain where bananas were still on ration books and sweets were still rationed. He had a dishwasher, a 4-slice toaster, deep freeze, washing machine and a spin dryer, which you all take for granted. Everyone I knew back home was still washing clothes by hand in the thick of making toast with a fork held over the fire. I had seen nothing like the giant supermarket on Herb's block, a single warehouse serving everything you could possibly think of to more than 1,200 families. Back home we shopped for the family at 4 or 5 corner shops like the one my mum had started. Years of doing without everything had dulled my appetite for acquisition. I became greedy. Britain's food ration had only just ended 9 years after the war. Here I felt like a Visigoth in Imperial Rome. 30 varieties of ice cream, tectonic layers of steaks, gallons of orange juice. All this, of course, had to be sustained by salesmanship. Away from the supermarket, what I learned had to appease news vendors, diner counter cooks, waiters, department stores, salesmen, and hotel staff. Every purchase I made provoked the same challenge. What else? What else? I went on a hotel and I rang up and I said, "Could I get some tea?" And what else? Well, maybe a muffin. What else? So in the end, you find you've spent up appeasing the app. There's no escaping from the hard sell in America, I write here. A newlywed friend of Herb's took an apartment high above the Hudson River, cozily safe, he thought, from the hustle of the marketplace. No way. Sign writers for a church got to work on a facing wall across from the apartment, and every night the newlywed couple, found themselves staring at a spotlit warning, "The wages of sin are death." Well, it would take more than doomsayers to shake America's faith in those days. Eisenhower was running for elections, very prosperous, through highways were being built, and so on. Everywhere I went, Elvis Presley was on the jukeboxes, so I had a wonderful time, except till I reached the Deep South, where I saw the brutality of the way the blacks were treated, and I had some frightening experiences, actually. I'll never forget them, because I went to see the head of the